I just don't understand the point of this interview.
Yeah.
Can we stop filming, please? So you're like shitting on their message.
So it's Pride Month. I guess I'll be a Ben Shapiro.
That somebody would beat somebody up is terrible, okay? As somebody who's viciously bullied in high school, I'm not a fan of bullying. But the idea that the normal suicide rate across the United States is 4%. The suicide rate in the transgender community is 40%. The idea that 36% more transgender people are committing suicide because people are mean to them is ridiculous. It's not true, and it's not backed by any science that anyone can cite. The idea that 36% more transgender people are committing suicide because people are mean to them is ridiculous. It's not true, and it's not backed by any science that anyone can cite.
So based on prior research and the findings of this report that Benjamin Shapiro cites, we find that mental health factors and experiences of harassment, discrimination, violence, and rejection may interact to produce a marked vulnerability to suicidal behavior in transgender and gender non-conforming individuals. So it seems that, like most conservatives, they rely on bad arguments and misquoting or misrepresenting statistics to win. That's fine. Let's go into the video.
Want me to respect what you identify yourself as?
I can identify as Chinese.
I think it's really up to you. I don't think it matters to me.
So yes,
Yeah, it's up to you.
So if I told you I was a 47-year-old Chinese woman, is that believable?
I mean, no disrespect.
Okay, so you would address me as a 37-year-old?
Sure.
Okay.
Can, yeah.
Okay, why not, right? Yeah.
Why not?
As long as I'm happy.
Exactly.
Alright, cool. How about if I identify as a Indian guy?
I mean, okay, that is, you have to be, wow.
You already say like, no, you're not Indian.
When it comes to nationality and race, allocated to you when you're born, in a sense, you can't...
I mean, gender is allocated when you're born too.
Yeah, but that's...
after like a few years, right, then they build up the story of how they would like to be identified as. I mean, same goes with race. I could be born as a Malay, but I want to be identified as Indian.
I know what you mean, but I don't think that's like how it works.
So you stop at race.
Yeah.
Wait, can I identify as she, her?
Yeah, of course.
Or clear cut, easy. Could I identify as a toddler?
What, can you identify as 3 or 4?
Yes.
That's all. The fact that he goes there willingly to troll and to make fun and mock and destroy the LGBT community.
It's different because are you going to kill yourself because people think that you're 21, not 35?
I might.
Who are already facing such disparities in healthcare, in education, in discrimination, in hiring, in housing, in marriage rights, and so on, goes to show how low he'll go for content. Most of what I will be covering today will just be answering some of the common transphobic talking points that he has posed that apparently no one has a logical or scientific answer for. So first, when we think of the gender question itself, right, I think a good way of thinking about things that are complicated or abstract would be setting up a 3-way framework. First, we want to think about the ontology of things, okay, the state of being. In this sense, what is gender, right? Then we want to think about the epistemology, which is like how it becomes and can we prove it? Can you prove that 1 + 1 is 2? And how do you know, or how do you prove that you're a man, or how do you prove that you're a woman? And then 3, the ethics, okay? So when I'm talking about ethics, I'm talking about normative ethics. So how we ought to treat transgenders. So first of all, what is gender, right? Gender is different from sex. I think most of the talking points that he regurgitates from Ben Shapiro is wholly confusing the two. Biological sex is not gender. So why can someone identify as another gender? What makes it right? So gender is different from sex. It's nothing to do with chromosomes. It's almost entirely psychological. And that psychology is based off the brain and the endocrine system, or the hormones. A lot of research have been done into why people are gay and why people are trans, and they find that actually there are many theories, such as the fraternal birth order theory, which states that male babies carry the Y chromosome and Y-linked proteins. And this Y-linked proteins throws the mother off homeostasis, disrupt their hormones, and causes much more drastic changes than a female baby would. So to adapt, the mothers then create this HY antigen. Then this HY antigen passes through the blood-brain barrier into the male babies, which affects their brain development, especially in the hypothalamus, which is heavily linked with sexual orientation. So as it comes from the mother, they feel that the antigen that comes from them will then impact the male baby into forming similar sexual orientations as the mother. So if the mother is straight, obviously if she's having a kid, she's straight, the male baby would also then be attracted to males. So if it's a lot of hormones and if it's a lot of neurochemistry that affects your brain to think that it's in the wrong body, or affects your brain to fall for the different type of genders, then it seems that you are not really choosing genders. So transgenders aren't really choosing genders. It's more that, so it seems that gender itself isn't really chosen or isn't really changed, and it's something that's given prenatally. So it means before they're born, they're already given a different sort of wiring in their brain that is different from their biological sex. So we can prove this by looking at intersex species or intersex people. Even if the gender was already assigned to them at birth by the doctor by cutting off one part of their genitalia, they actually grew up to identify more with their own gender identity rather than their current biological sex. So yes, gender is a social construct, but that construct comes from your biology and your neurochemistry, which most of the time cannot be controlled for, right? It's not like people wake up one day and decide, oh, you know what, I want to become a transgender person. I want to be discriminated by society, and I want to have higher rates of attempted suicide and self-harm, and I want to be made fun of by my friends and kicked out by my own family, right? This is all very fun for me. No one's like that. Right now, let's move on to the ethics, normative ethics, right? So how do we treat transgenders? This question, or this part of this framework, dives away from the definition and the proof of what is a male and what's a female. Essentially, we just want to know how can we reduce the harm that these communities are facing, which many of the Singaporeans here actually answer quite well. You know, it doesn't bother me, why should I care?
I mean, like, if that's what you choose to like describe yourself as, then I have to respect that. I cannot come to you and say, no, you're a man. Like, I can't say that.
It's not similar. If that's what you think you are, then
anything wrong with identifying yourself as anything that makes you happy. Even if like, I mean, to some people they might find it stupid that like, you know, they are like on the internet there are people like that identify themselves like meow or whatever. I don't care, as long as you're happy, you don't affect anyone, then like just fuck shit down, you know.
So if I come to you and say that, okay, I'm a 42-year-old Burmese woman,
period,
will help them usually by default is I will get addressed by she, her.
what do you think my pronoun is?
I don't want to assume.
We have tried shaming, we have tried discriminating, we have tried many things that are illegal and unethical to curb this issue, if you could call it an issue, but all the results show that it's not working. No matter how much you try to convince someone that they're not gay, it's almost the same as trying to convince someone that they have a tail, you know? That is not ethical, that's not who they really are. And at the end of the day, you're just really hurting yourself and themselves too. So to answer Amirun's question, why can't I identify as a 35-year-old, right? We have to go back to when I was talking, right? We have to then think about what I was saying about numbers. As I was mentioning before, these numbers have to follow certain arithmetic principles, meaning, you know, 1 cannot be greater than 2, so 1 cannot identify as 3. If not, everything wouldn't make sense and everything would be meaningless, and then therefore maths wouldn't be logical and systematic anymore. And also, being 35 years of age has nothing to do with gender at all. And 2, the epistemology of being 35. How can he prove that he's 35? If he says that he's born in the year 2001, then objectively, we can't say that, yep, you're good to go as a 35-year-old, because that wouldn't be true. There's no proof, there's no basis of this. Whereas transgendered people show brain scans similar to their identified sex rather than their biological ones at birth. So, and then we move on to ethics, right? So if he wants to identify as a 35-year-old, would that be ethical? Would we want someone to identify as any age? How would we work that into our society? If that's possible, I want to do it too, okay? I want my CPF now, okay? But obviously, that's going to have so much implications with people just identifying as whatever age that they want. Pedophilia, yada, 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 right? So, without even thinking so far or going into it too deep, you cannot identify as any age because it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't follow, it doesn't fit the framework at all. So, now why can't Aimrun identify as a Chinese then? Well, what is a Chinese? Chinese is a race. Race is a social construct to group people to their biological or physical characteristics. So take a look at me and take a look at someone I enjoy listening to and take a look at Brent Fires. I listen to a lot of his music, I am into the culture a lot, but I cannot identify as black. Reasons being, based on my biological or physical characteristics, you know, melanin, hair color, hair type, I don't have an afro, that excludes me almost entirely. Another thing is with gender, like I mentioned before, it's a big psychological state. So when he says that he identifies as a Chinese, what does that really mean? Like, can you think like a Chinese? The same way that you can think like a female. For instance, we have a lot of stereotypes which are generally true in society. For example, males are more aggressive than females generally, right? Because of higher testosterone. What would that hormonal basis be for race then? What hormone makes you less or more of your race? And how is race malleable? Do you have similar brain structures like a Chinese? Is there even a Chinese brain?
You know what that means? You know what that means? See what you discover gender, right? But for race also is the same, what? Because like, oh, what if I say, oh, in the long run, oh, I like Chinese New Year, I like ang paos, I like lo hei, I like pork. I like Chinese food. The hawker center, Chinese food. That's what I go for every single day. I want to dress as Chinese, like Chinese cultural wears. Yeah, so I want to be identified as a Chinese. So why not?
Because you said that you enjoy Chinese New Year and receiving money, so therefore you want to identify as Chinese. Like, if for example, if I celebrate Christmas, does that make me a Christian? If I have a mustache, does that make me your father? No? Right, so a lot of these transphobes have many of these really low IQ takes on what they can identify as. And then on the next part of the video, he goes on attacking love is love and all of these slogans. Now, personally, I am not a liberal, and while I do get the well-meaning messages behind love is love, etc., I'm not going to waste my time in defending it and would much rather talk about the concept itself. Why? Because you give yourself up to too many strawmans, thought experiments, gaslighting and manipulation before you can get what you want across. You know, start sharp, start focused. Say things like, I believe that anyone can love anybody regardless of their gender, then and there, and then have a discussion about that. Right? Big and vague ideas will only invite trolls to score easy wins. Low-hanging fruits. Whenever you are faced with these sort of transphobic talking points again, or whenever Aimrun comes to you and goes, why can't I identify as a table? Why can't I identify as a table? The answer is you can't. Because a table is not a gender, and a table has actually more uses than you. Thank you.